Good morning, everyone. This is Ben. I'm still waiting on a couple folks to join us, and I'm getting some questions in from the chat box around technical difficulties. So I'm going to give us about 5 minutes before we actually start, but thanks, everyone, for being prompt in here. We'll begin shortly. Hey, Josh, I just got your question via the chat box. Let me know if you're able to hear this very brief conversation right now. Somebody has a lot of background noise. If you have the ability to mute your line on your end, go ahead and do that. Josh, I'm going to keep talking to you to see if you're able to hear me. Send me a message when you can. Okay, I'm going to give us just a couple more minutes, folks, and then we'll get going. All right, Josh, I'm going to try one more time to see if you're able to hear this audio. I'll also send you a quick message via the system here. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. First of all, thanks everyone for joining me this morning. I appreciate it. A couple quick logistics about the technology we're using to help make things go smoothly today. First thing is, if you have the ability to mute your phone on your end, if your phone has a mute button, go ahead and use that when you're not talking, and that'll eliminate any feedback or static that everyone else will get. If you don't have a mute button, you should be able to press *6 to mute your phone and then *6 to unmute it if you have a question. And then around questions, I do encourage them. So please ask any and all questions you have as we're going through this. You have two ways to do it. The first is through the phone, so don't hesitate to speak up. If you have a question, just get my attention that way, and we can answer questions that way. The other way is you can type questions in through the GoToMeeting control panel, which is that little bit of software that you downloaded and is now running that allows me to share my screen with you. You should see a questions box within that control panel. You can type in a message just like a private message or a text message and send it to me that way. And I'll be monitoring those for the next 30 or 45 minutes to make sure that you get all of your questions answered. Okay, so that's how we'll use the system. Don't hesitate to speak up and ask questions. There are no bad questions. There's no silly questions. Go ahead and ask them. I want to make sure you leave here with a solid understanding of what the system is capable of doing and what I expect and what we all expect in terms of how you'll use it. So that's it around the GoToMeeting controls. Let's go ahead and get started. What you're actually looking at on your screen right now is the new online system that we're using this year. That's about a month later than we wanted it to be launched, but is finally up and ready for use for all of you on the AmeriCorps reporting side of it. The name of the system is America Learns, and America Learns is available to national service and mentoring programs throughout the country. So we're actually connected to a much larger network of like-minded people and like-minded programs. On today's call, we're not going to focus too much on that larger network. We're going to do that at a later date. Today, what we're going to focus on is really narrowly on reporting and reflection logs that you all will be submitting around your AmeriCorps service. And we're going to talk through how those work mechanically within this new system. And we're going to talk a little bit about the content and kind of review some of the content that you'll be expected to report around this system. So those are kind of our two goals. It'll take 30 to 45 minutes depending on how many questions y'all have and how much time we want to dedicate to it. So right now, I'm actually logged into our customized site, and you will get an email this afternoon that's going to have the link to this online site, and it's going to have your username and your password. And it's also going to have a few documents that summarize some of the things we'll talk about today. So I'd encourage you to take any notes that you want or need to take, but also know that you don't have to commit this 100% to memory. There will be some documentation and some support around this system and around the reports that you'll need to provide. The screen that we're looking at now is actually the home page, and I'm actually logged in as one of our AmeriCorps members. So this is the screen you will see as soon as you log in. As I mentioned at the very beginning of the call, we are connected to a nationwide network of similar programs who use this system. So when you log in, on the very first part of the homepage, what you'll see is some college coaching course strategies, which we'll talk about later, national strategies, and share a strategy. We're not going to spend too much talking about this today, I just want to give you a very brief overview of what these tools are. Essentially what this means is by connecting to the AmeriCorps Network, we've connected to other programs who use this system to share best practices, resources, ideas, and strategies around youth mentoring and tutoring programs. Some of the people who submit these strategies are fellow AmeriCorps members who are doing very similar things to what you're doing throughout the country. Others are mentoring program staff who have been working in the mentoring field for a number of years. And others are working more specifically with tutoring programs. But in all of those cases, there will be resources and tools and strategies that you can access through this system that we've never had access to in the past, and my hope is that it'll be useful to you. When we get about 3 to 4 months into using this system, we're going to explore some of that stuff a little more in depth, but we want to spend the first 1 to 2 months really making sure that our internal systems and processes are up and running smoothly before we get into that too much. But for now, just by way of general overview, when you log in, feel free to explore anything and everything related to those national strategies, but just hold off on submitting or sharing anything, but feel free to jump in. And I have a question in the chat box from Sarah, who says she can't hear anything. So give me a second to troubleshoot with Sarah real quick. Give me about 30 seconds here. Okay, hopefully we'll get Sarah's phone connected here in just a minute. Okay, so let's keep going. That's just a quick overview of kind of what it means to be connected to this larger network. We're actually going to have someone from the AmeriCorps team come in and do a similar presentation in the next couple months to help give us a much more in-depth overview. That's just kind of by way of introduction. So then what we want to focus today's session on is around the reporting and reflection logs that we're asking you to submit on a monthly basis. And so what we're going to do in order to facilitate that is just go ahead and look at the reporting and reflection log for the month of September that's currently live and ready to be used in the system. So when you log in, again, this is your home page. You can find any of these active reporting logs right on the left-hand side of the page. And you can see that the blue hyperlink here is the reporting and reflection log for the month of September of 2011. So we're going to go ahead and click that, and it's going to take us directly to the report and reflection log that we need to complete. Okay, I'm just giving the software a chance to catch up, so give me just a second. Okay, we should be ready to go. So quickly then, just by way of a quick overview, what you'll see in the first 2 months for September and October, so for the first 2 months of your AmeriCorps service, you will see reporting and reflections logs that have 6 questions each, and they will be exactly identical for the first 2 months. And these 6 questions that you see will be asked of you monthly, so you'll become very familiar with them. Just by way of quick overview, the first one is around new matches, and we'll talk through each of these in a little bit of depth in just a second. The second one is around matches sustained, or if you like to think about it in terms of matches supported, either language is fine. The third question is going to ask you around any resources or activities you've been involved in that are related to school success and college access. And again, that's going to vary, as we talked about in September, a lot based on your program model, the age of the youth that you're serving, and so on. The fourth question is kind of strange language, but it's AmeriCorps lingo called other volunteers. And other volunteers, in a nutshell, are volunteers that you engage and mobilize over and above the mentors that are part of your program. We'll unpack that as well as we get there. The fifth question is going to ask you about any progress you've made toward your required service project during your AmeriCorps year. And then finally, there's going to be a sixth question every month asking you to submit a good story or a great story. And a great story is simply a short narrative that describes the impact or a impact of your AmeriCorps service. So it's a chance for you to brag a little bit. So tell me something awesome that's happening or something good that's happening because you're serving with AmeriCorps. It can be something positive that's happened to you. Had some really great stories from members at the end of their first years telling us about how AmeriCorps has led into employment or graduate school or something like that. It could be a story about a youth in your program who's been positively impacted by a mentor, or anything along those lines. Okay, so each month you will see these 6 questions. They're going to be staples. You'll learn them very well over the next 10 to 11 months. In addition to these 6, and probably around the 2 or 3 months from now, we'll start to feed in some other questions that will help us do things like evaluation. And we'll give you some heads up and some coaching each month when those questions get introduced. And we're not going to get there for a couple months. But for now, I want you to be very familiar with these 6. So we're going to kind of focus on this, and then also to be aware that in future months we'll start to introduce some new things here and there so that we can learn more about what you're doing and more about the effectiveness of our program and the experience that you're having as an AmeriCorps member. Okay? So I'm going to scroll back up to the top of this page very quickly then, and what we're going to do is just walk step by step through what it would mean to complete one of these monthly logs, and then pause lots of times to ask you for questions about them. Okay? So the way we'll do this is first we'll just talk about the mechanics of this. So how do you input data and what do you need to input? And then secondly, we'll talk about the content. So what are the things that I need to be tracking and then reporting back? So mechanically, it's a very simple and intuitive system. It's essentially like an online survey, like a SurveyMonkey or something along those lines in terms of how it works functionally. Each question has a combination of narrative text boxes and radio buttons and check boxes. So it's pretty foolproof and streamlined. For example, in new matches, the very first question is simply, how many matches did you play a significant role in creating last month? And for this month, again, we're talking about the month of September. So how many new matches did you play a significant role in creating in September? And you're just going to enter a number, whatever that number is. For some of you, this won't be a very high number on a month-to-month basis. And for some of you, there might be a lot of months where this is actually a 0. And I want to pause for a second just to reiterate to all of you that I know that and I understand that. Especially for those of you who are in school-based programs or site-based programs that revolve around the academic year, the majority of your matches are going to get made in September and October. So you'll have matches to report during your first couple months in terms of new matches, but then you might not have a lot of new matches to report throughout the rest of the year. And I get that, and I know that, and I understand that. So it's important to simply report accurately whatever it is that is the result of your service efforts. So if it's large on the front end of the year and then it's small and zeros throughout the rest of the year, that's okay. Know that I understand that and get that. So that's the first part of it. Just give me a number. Then the second part of this question, and there's only 2 parts to it, is asking you to describe what you did to help create new mentoring relationships. And I want to try to pause here because this can be a little confusing at the start of your AmeriCorps service year. For the purposes of your AmeriCorps reporting, it's important to understand what we mean by AmeriCorps members playing significant roles in the creation of new mentoring relationships. That language is very broad and it's very vague, but it's that way on purpose. And the reason it's that way is because we work at the statewide level with a very diverse group of programs and people and volunteers and mentoring models. And because of that, all of you, even though you're focused on similar stuff, youth mentoring, have very different assignments based on your geography, based on your host site's program model, and so on. So this language is an attempt to be broad enough to allow all of you to describe your impact related to the creation of new matches within the context of what you're doing locally. So in order to count your contribution to a new match, what you need to think about is this list of stuff that you see in the second portion of this question. Okay, so everything that says recruitment all the way down to communication. If you did any one or multiple of these types of activities, and that activity contributed to the creation of a new mentoring relationship, you should count that as a new match for your AmeriCorps reporting purposes. Okay? So you don't actually have to be the one who makes the match and conducts the match meeting, because some of you won't do that ever. Some of you are focused 90 to 95% of the time on recruitment, and as a result, you have very little to do with match support or match activities or matchmaking. But recruitment is a vital component of creating new relationships. So if you are successfully recruiting new mentors, you should report those new matches being made when the match is made if you recruited the volunteer. Others of you are very, very disconnected from the recruitment process and are much more heavily involved in the enrollment and matchmaking and match support process. Know that you don't have to be the one to physically go out and recruit the volunteer in order to make the new match. If your role is around match support and there's a new match that's created by someone who's responsible for enrollment and matching, and then that match gets passed to you to provide the ongoing support to the match, you should count that as a new match. Okay, so the couple questions have come in, and I'm going to pause to answer those, and they're very similar, so I'm going to go ahead and try to combine them if I can. Sarah Williams is asking, what if I did those things but it didn't result in a new match, like the match almost happened? So that's a good thing. Good question, Sarah. So if, for example, you have a month where you did recruitment, you did screening, and you did training, you got all the way up to the matchmaking point of the process, but then the mentor bails for whatever reason, you can put a 0 in the number box, but check off any of the activities you did that were related to creating new mentoring relationships. Because you're absolutely, and Sarah is one of our second-year members, she can share her experiences with you. Sometimes you get almost there and you put all this effort in and it doesn't work out. If and when that happens, you can put the appropriate number, whether that be a 0 or 1 or a 2 or whatever, but still continue to check off the boxes that describe what you did in terms of your activity. And then if your activities don't fit within this list, there's an other box here as well. So don't need to feel constrained to just those things. So Sarah, that's a good question. Hopefully it answers it. Christine, your question. Christine asks, if a member attends a recruitment event or does a presentation during a month but doesn't get any new matches, should they be checking the boxes? So Christine, that's the same but different question. So yes, go ahead and check off your activities, even if it doesn't necessarily result in a new match being made in that month. Kim asks, okay, so Kim asks, I did a bunch of recruitment meetings in September, but new matches didn't get made until October. When should I report them as new matches? So this is a really good question, and so key in on this. You should report new matches in your AmeriCorps reporting in the month that the match actually is made. Okay, so if you recruit a mentor in September, you put them through the screening process, etc., and then you get to the matchmaking process in October, you should count that as a new match in October, not in September, as far as the number is concerned. And then your activities, those fall in whichever month you actually did them. So Kim, hopefully that helps answer your question. Okay, I'm going to give you one further little piece of advice. And Kim says, yes, good. Happy to help, Kim. Based on Priscilla's experience, and Priscilla is here in her second term of service, just began last month, from Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Lakeshore. And I'm going to pick on her a little bit to talk through an example that the two of us worked through during the first couple months of her first year of AmeriCorps experience. And essentially what I kind of want to talk about is the fact that you have a couple different languages to learn as part of AmeriCorps. In the first place, you have the language of your host site. So you'll have a set of jargon and lingo and acronyms and all kinds of little things that you'll learn as part of your host site's language. So you might, instead of in your documentation of listing child and volunteer and that kind of thing, you might list C for child or P for parent or V for volunteer, or however it works. So you've kind of got that one little bit of language. And then the second bit of language that you have to learn is this AmeriCorps-specific language, and that's the stuff we're talking about today. So for example, what does it mean to play a significant role in the creation of new mentoring relationships? Well, when Priscilla first started, and Priscilla, I hope you don't mind that I'm using you as an example this way. When Priscilla first started, in her first few months of reports, she was reporting to me an increasing number of matches that were part of her active caseload every month. So for matches sustained, which we'll talk to in just a minute, she was reporting a bigger number every month. So it started around 30, then it was up to 35, then up to 40, and up to 45. But she wasn't reporting any new matches, and that was kind of a head-scratcher to me. So I called her, and our supervisor was like, hey, let's talk about this. What's going on? I think we're, kind of talking past each other. What ultimately had happened was that this was a result of two different types of language. In Priscilla's agency, they have a staff person who is responsible for recruitment, enrollment, and matchmaking. And essentially what happens is that professional staff member is responsible for matching new volunteers with kids in the program and actually facilitating the new matches. And then what was happening in her internal host site language, those matches were getting transferred to Priscilla after the match was made to do the ongoing support. So during that first month, every couple weeks she's calling to check in. During the first 6 months, it's every other week, and so on and so forth. So in Priscilla's mind, based on the kind of her host site language, she wasn't making new matches. But from my perspective, she was making new matches, because without that high-quality support she was providing, immediately after the match meeting and immediately after the match was made, that match doesn't have a real good chance of lasting and actually working out. So what Priscilla and I just had to talk through was the fact that, yes, you are playing a significant role in the creation of a new mentoring relationship, even though you're not necessarily the one that's doing the match meeting and not necessarily the one surveying the interests of the student or the child or the volunteer. So you might find it to be the case that something similar happens at your host site. If it does, here's my advice. Don't panic. Give me a call and let's talk about it, because it's really, really critical that we get these numbers right and that we get on the same page about it. And especially for the first 2 to 3 months of your AmeriCorps service, let's talk. We don't want anything to slip through the cracks. We want to make sure that we fully capture your impact and your impact on serving more kids through mentoring relationships. Because thinking back to September's orientation, that's one of the primary goals of this program, to connect more kids to caring adult and near peer mentors, okay? One more question came in from Alicia. Are we going to be filling out reports since we have started our service not only for October but September as well? Yes. You will have one report for the month of September, and you will have one report for the month of October. So yes, you will have reports to complete. In terms of how that will work, that'll be easily distinguishable right on the home page. So you'll have one that'll be a link to September and one that is a link to October. Okay, the last part I want to say around new matches is simply this. The new matches report each month is independent of the month that comes before it and after it. So September's reports and activities and numbers are independent of October's numbers, are independent of December's numbers, and so on and so forth. So new matches, this very first question, is a monthly report. No cumulative numbers. It's simply that month on its own. That's going to be important because as we transition to the second question, I'm actually asking you for a cumulative number. And we'll return to that in just a second. But I want to make sure that you understand the first question is monthly. The second number I'm going to ask you for is a cumulative number. And that cumulative number is how many mentoring matches have you supported so far throughout your AmeriCorps experience. So for the month of September, that's a really easy one. How many matches did you support in September? And October's reporting is when it gets a little more tricky because you're going to tell me in total during September and October what was the total number of matches that I was actively supporting. Okay? Here's a key thing to think about. Because this is a cumulative number, this number will never go down. So let's say, for example, that when you came on board, you inherited 30 matches from the AmeriCorps member who came before you, and now it's your role to continue to provide monthly match support and match monitoring for those matches. So let's say 30 is your number for September. But then let's say in October, 2 of those matches closed. Let's say they made it through their 12-month commitment and they just decided it was a good time to formally close the match because they had accomplished the goals they had set out to accomplish. For October, you wouldn't report to me a 28. You would still report to me that to date you have supported 30 matches. What you would do instead to report on that closure is to look down to the last question in the matches sustained part of this question and tell me if it was an early closure. Okay, I'm going to pause right there and ask if that makes sense, because that can be a little tricky the first couple times we talk about it. What I'm concerned about in tracking right here is our progress toward our statewide goal, which is that 65% at minimum, 65% of the matches that our AmeriCorps members create and sustain should last as long as they ought to last. And that means two things. In school-based programs, we want to see a minimum of 8-month-long relationships based around the academic year. And in community-based settings, we want to see matches last at least 12 months long. So I'm going to use my example again of 30 matches. Let's say that you had 30 matches in September, and in October, 2 of them closed, right? So you wouldn't report to me a number 28. You would still report to me 30, because month to date, you've supported 30 matches. But if those matches closed on time, and there was no early closure to them, you wouldn't report anything here, because you're only reporting to me early closures. And the reason you're reporting early closures is because the data I'm trying to track is the number of matches that are closing early, so that I can get at that percentage as I'm reporting to my stakeholders and to my funders, okay? Now I'm going to pause. I'm kind of surprised there aren't any questions. Let me stop for about 30 seconds. If you have a question, ask over the phone or type it in, and I'm going to give about 30 seconds for that to happen. Okay, a couple folks typing in that makes sense, that it's clear, so that's good. So then a couple clarifiers that I want to give to this kind of matches supported question. What I'm really trying to get at here is the number of matches that you are providing a very active type of consistent support to. So what I'm not necessarily looking for here is, let's say you are instrumental in planning a large group match activity for your larger mentoring program. So some of you are in programs where there are literally hundreds of matches. What I wouldn't want to see is for you to put a 300 in this number right here, because you planned a really huge event and you had 300 people show up. That's not the number I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is matches for whom you have done the kind of stuff that gets listed right below it. So if you are responsible for providing ongoing match support and monitoring via phone, email, and in-person communications, make sure you count those matches. If you are involved with mentor or parent, guardian / mentee training for a group of matches, that's the kind of support I'm looking for. Or if you're planning on a consistent basis match activities where it's just your kind of, for lack of a better term, caseload of match activities, mentoring matches, then that's the kind of support I'm looking for. So does that make sense? What we should see here in terms of this number is, just for lack of a better way of putting it, your caseload. So what number of matches is really assigned to you, and you're doing the bulk of the ongoing support and that kind of thing. Bethany asks, so Bethany serves at Bethany Christian Services out in GR, and she's in her second term. Being a second-year AmeriCorps member, will our matches just carry over as far as match duration goes? Yeah, Bethany, that's fine. And I'm going to tell you that that's fine because you're in, I'm assuming you're asking about community-based matches. Could you just send me a message letting me know what you're asking, if it's community-based or school-based matches, because that's an important distinction to make there. Community-based. Okay. So if you're a second-year member, and that's Bethany and Priscilla and Sarah, and you are serving in a program where there's a community-based component and the commitment is for 12 months, then yes, carry those matches over. And if matches close, but they're not early closures, then make sure not to report them as early closures. Sarah, the only piece of this where this might be different for you is if you have matches that, let's say, last academic year, they met for the entire academic year, and they maybe they choose to stay together for the first semester this year, and then they close, and they're intentional about not counting those as early closures, if that makes sense. we don't want to skew the numbers that way. We want to make sure that we capture it accurately. So just be intentional about the 8-month part and the 12-month part. If matches have lasted that long, make sure that you don't report them as early. And Sarah, in your case, even if it's kind of halfway through the semester, if they started meeting together last year. Okay, so then quick overview of matches sustained. You're going to give me the number of your caseload, right? You're going to briefly describe what you're doing to support matches and utilize this other feature, guys. The lists that I have here are kind of broad, and if you're doing other stuff on a consistent basis that doesn't fit in these categories, I can add categories so that you don't have to type it in every month. And then finally, the third and final part of this question, early closures. I'm not concerned with closures. When it's past the duration, minimum duration for the program, I'm only concerned about early closures, okay? Any other questions about matches sustained before we move on? Okay, so I'm going to reiterate one last time. These are the 2 hardest things that you'll have to track and report on, and I want to reiterate this just one more time. If you get stuck, please call me, because getting this data right and your contributions to these goals right is critical. It's one of the most important things that we do as part of our AmeriCorps service, and that's to report on and evaluate what we're doing. Do not hesitate to call or email me. Let's get it right, and there are no silly questions, I promise you. Thanks, Dawn. I appreciate your comment. Dawn just indicated that it makes sense to her, so that's good. I'm glad it's making sense. Okay, so then the last 4 questions are all pretty quick and simple. We've made it through the hard stuff. This is the easy stuff. So thinking back again to September and our orientation and our collaboration with Michigan Campus Compact and this College Access Network that's part of the kind of a new movement within the state, we are interested in hearing about the things that you and your programs are doing to help mentoring relationships be forward thinking and be thinking about school success in the moment now and then future planning toward post-secondary education. Again, reiterating, all of your programs are different. The age of the youth that you serve varies, so this is going to look very different from program to program to program. And further, some programs are going to be more involved with this college access stuff than others. If you're like, I don't think we have anyone, Krista's with us. If you're helping with a near-peer mentoring model where you have middle schoolers mentoring elementary schoolers or high schoolers mentoring middle schoolers, the college access stuff that you do and plan might be very minimal, and it might be very sporadic. It might not be a consistent part of what you're doing because the kids that you're serving aren't anywhere close to college yet, and that's okay and that's fine. But some of you are in programs that are heavily involved with promoting college and promoting post-secondary education to high school youth and older middle school youth. We want to capture whatever your involvement is, as little or as much as you're involved. So this set of questions is designed to help us get at that. And some of them are bean counting number questions. So how many activities did you plan? How many resources did you provide? But then the most important part of this is actually the description. I am really interested in hearing about detailed descriptions about what your programs are doing to promote school success and college readiness with your mentoring matches. So be in-depth, provide as much detail as you can, and share that with me on a monthly basis through this system. Kim asks a question. I did a getting to know you page with my matches that asked them what they want to be when they grow up and what college would they like to attend. Can I use that? Yes, that's a wonderful example. And Kim, how old were the kids that you did this get to know you page with? Sarah asks, do I not answer any of these? I do provide some college access activities, but they're already in college. Sarah Williams and Sarah Lamphere, you're both with us this morning. You are in programs that are mentoring college students. You have, in some cases, adult volunteers mentoring college students, and in some cases, upperclassmen mentoring college students. Sarah and Sarah, what I would like to hear from you is anything, and I might have to add a custom question for you. Let me know what you think after you've done your first 2 reports on this. What I want to hear about is what you're doing to help students make the transition from wherever it is they were before college into their first and second years of college. So I want to hear about those things, and if I have to create a custom question in here in order to get it, we can do that. But I definitely do want to hear them. So Sarah and Sarah, let me know your thoughts on that after you've been in the system a little bit. Kim, to get back on your question, K through high school. So Kim, that's a wonderful example of a very simple activity that I absolutely want to hear about. So you would say, how many college access resources did you provide? That wasn't so much a resource as it was a match activity, in my opinion. And I only know really one paragraph about what you did. So you can put it in either place based on where you think it fit. So if that was kind of one match activity, you'd say, one, it was a large group match activity. And then you're going to give me a good description, 1 to 2 paragraphs long, about what the activity was, and then if there's any cool outcomes for that. So if you had a kid come up to you and say, this is the first time I ever thought about college and I want to be a doctor, that would be a good thing to put in the description. Okay, any other questions about the college access resources and activities section of this log? Some cool examples of stuff that happened during the first year of our program. We had members collaborate together to do college visits. So they took mentors and mentees to various colleges as match activities throughout the state of Michigan. That's a really wonderful example. And then we had, that's a really complicated one that takes a lot of planning and time and energy. And then there's really simple stuff, like the thing that Kim talked about, where you can do just a very simple activity that asks kids at whatever age they are to reflect on what they want to do and who they want to be and what they want to become. And that can be a way to help prod them into thinking about what they need to do in order to actually get there and realize those dreams. So that's the kind of stuff we're looking for here. Okay, Julie has one more question. By college-focused match activities, does this mean only if they are checking out a specific college? Nope. It's very broad in its intent. So college focus does not mean a specific college. When we use college in our AmeriCorps program, we are thinking about anything that relates to post-secondary education at all, anything and everything. That includes activities that are around present school success, and maybe I should tweak some of that language in the reporting log so it's more clear. If you're Julie, you are in a Winning Futures program that is inherently about helping kids get through school. So you might have monthly activities that you do in your group mentoring sessions that you will include in this college access, college resources, college focus stuff. Anything that's geared toward helping kids succeed in school in the present and or connect to post-secondary education is what I'm interested in hearing about here. Does that help, Julie? Okay, I'll go ahead and move on and wait for Julie to type in an answer. Yes, she says yes. Good. Okay. Okay, then the fourth question is around other volunteers. And again, this is some AmeriCorps lingo and AmeriCorps language that y'all have to learn. At the national level, the Corporation for National and Community Service, the federal agency that administers AmeriCorps programs, wants to know how many volunteers get engaged in volunteerism and service as a result of AmeriCorps members. Now in our program, we have our mentors, and they are the primary volunteer category that we mobilize and we engage on an ongoing basis. However, it is likely to be the case that over the course of your AmeriCorps service, you engage volunteers in additional capacities. So they will be doing things for you or for your kids or for your programs that are kind of over and above the mentoring stuff that they do. Here's some examples of things that happened during year one. We talked a little bit about Missy Olgeen, who serves now where Alicia is up in Midland and Isabella DHS offices, engaged volunteers to be drivers for a college visit that they planned. So you had a volunteer drive a van to transport the kids and the mentors to the college visit. That would count as an other volunteer. Let's say you are Amy Raha. Is Amy with us today? I think she might have been with us yesterday. Can't remember for sure, but she serves, oh, she's here, Bethany says. They're planning a bake sale at Bethany Christian Services to raise some money for match activities, okay? If you guys engage volunteers to help you pull off that bake sale, they would be other volunteers. So, for example, if you have community members who are volunteering baked goods, they would count as other volunteers, and I want to know about it. So let's say you have 10 people from the community volunteer to bake stuff for your bake sale, and they contribute stuff to the bake sale, they would count as other volunteers. So you're going to list them as 10. And then you're going to give me the best estimate you have. Don't overcount this, but give me the best estimate you have in terms of the number of hours that they volunteered for you. So let's say they did 2 hours each in terms of their baking. That would be 20 volunteer hours. Then you're going to be specific and describe what they did to volunteer over and above the mentoring stuff. So Amy, you might tell me that you recruited 10 volunteers to bake for the bake sale. They baked cookies, brownies, and whatever else they baked. And they brought them to the bake sale, and as a result, we raised, $500 to help support match activities for the remainder of the year. That's what I'm looking for in the other volunteers category. So other volunteers, just to recap, are volunteers who are giving service hours and volunteering for your students, your kids, your programs, over and above their normal mentoring stuff. So these are not your mentors who are doing 1 hour a week of mentoring. These are volunteers. They might still be your mentors, but it's the volunteering that they do over and above their commitments to the mentoring stuff. Okay, so Sarah asks a really excellent question. Sarah, what if my mentees are volunteering for events with me? Do they count because they're in the program? Sarah, they do count. So if you get your mentees, whatever age they are, whether they're elementary school students or college students, if you engage them in volunteering and you mobilize a volunteer project or projects with them, absolutely count them in the other volunteers section. And in the description, let me know that, because that's a really cool story. Let me know that it's your mentees. Ben, what if a mentor brings cupcakes to a mentor session to share with their group? That's something I'm not as concerned about. What we're looking for is something that's over and above the mentoring hour or the mentoring experience. But again, I'm going to reiterate to you folks, if you get to this report and you have that kind of really specific question like Julie just asked, make sure you ask me, because we want to make sure we get it right. But in that case, Julie, that would not be something I'm particularly concerned about capturing. Okay, any other questions around the other volunteers piece? Okay, 2 more to go, and they're both quick and easy. Oh, there's one more from Dawn. So if there is a community-based mentor who supports an activity their mentee is not at, can I count them? Yes. Yep. It doesn't have to be a match volunteering. It can be a mentor. It can be a mentee. It could be a match, but I'm concerned about individuals in this case. So let's say, Dawn, that you had a mentor and a mentee come to volunteer at an event. You would count them as 2 people. In this case, they would not count as 1 match. They would count as 2 people. Okay. 5th and second to last is service project. So one of the things that you're responsible for and hopefully excited about during your service term is to plan and conduct a service project that addresses a local community need and engages youth mentees in service to help address that need. So there's two criteria and only 2 criteria for your service project. The first is that it addresses something that's relevant to your community. So it's not something that I'm going to prescribe to you sitting here from Lansing. It's something you're going to discover because of your involvement and engagement within your community. And secondly, it should engage at least some of the youth from your program, some of the mentees in service. And the idea here is to get the youth mentees, who are primarily the recipients of service in our program, thinking about how they can be change agents as well. So that's the idea. We're trying to kind of flip the script on the youth who are receiving service. Each month, you're going to report to me the type of progress that you're making toward getting this service project done. And just as an FYI, it doesn't have to be just one. You can do multiple, and many of our members have done multiple. And also as an FYI, they don't have to be huge, large-scale things. They can be very simple things. One of the things that happened during year 1, for example, is one of our school-based programs. We had a member working with a school-based program. She solicited donations for fleece blankets from a local fabric store. She brought them to a school-based mentoring session, and as a match activity, the mentors and mentees made fleece blankets that were then donated to a homeless shelter where they were given to children in the community who needed them. So it was a very real community need. It was a very simple match activity to develop, but something like 30-some fleece blankets got made as part of a match activity. That'd be an excellent example of a service project. So in this report, you're going to tell me in the first place how many service projects you conducted during the month. And in some cases, it's going to be a 0. In some cases, it might be 1 or more. And then you're going to describe to me in narrative form any progress that you made, whether that be a brainstorming session, a planning session, or the implementation of the project. You're going to tell me as best as you can how many people were served through this service project. So if, for example, you made 30 fleece blankets and you donated to the homeless shelter, a fair assumption would be to say 30 kids would have been served as a result of the service project. And then lastly, I want to hear about the impact of the project in as specific terms as possible. So I want you to tell me, in my community there was this need. As the result of our service project, this need will be addressed in the following ways. And then if you have anything you can tell me about kind of qualitative cool stuff that kids might have shared with you as a result of participating, I want to hear that too. Okay. So 2 quick questions. Kim, you asked a question about the Black Bear Festival. Let's tackle that one on a one-on-one basis because I want to know more about what that festival is, and I do not at the moment. And Kim, second question with those, so that was just the end of the question. Kim, let's talk about that on a one-on-one basis because I'm not, I don't know much about what that festival looks like and I want to know a little more. Any other questions about the service project part of this reporting? Okay, doesn't look like it. Okay, then the last piece is the simplest one, but I promise you it will begin to feel like the most tedious one about halfway through your AmeriCorps service. So I'm going to give you kind of a preemptive pep talk. One of the most important things that you will do as part of your AmeriCorps service is share stories that demonstrate the impact of what you're doing. One of the things that's happening right now at the federal level is that AmeriCorps is facing some hostility in terms of budget conversations. And there have been, over the past 8 to 10 months, a couple different proposals that have zeroed out AmeriCorps from the federal budget, meaning AmeriCorps, if those bills pass, would go away. So we've really been focused about rallying the troops, everyone who's invested in AmeriCorps, to talk about the impact that AmeriCorps makes in communities and on the lives of the people who are served through AmeriCorps members. So every month, I'm going to ask you to share something positive that's happening as a result of your AmeriCorps service, and I'm going to use these stories and share them with stakeholders and interested parties and legislators and all kinds of other people to help demonstrate that what we do matters. And we know it matters because we see these impacts and these changes and this positivity. So it is going to feel tedious. I promise you that it will. But I'm going to encourage you now and continue to encourage you throughout the year. Please take this Great Stories part seriously because it is very serious. It helps us tell the story about what you're accomplishing in ways that I can't do on your behalf. This allows you to do it in your words and on your terms, and then I can share it up with stakeholders as it's appropriate. There's very little guideline here, so you don't have to follow a specific format. Some members each month are pretty brief, and they'll write 5 or fewer sentences. Other members choose to write 5 or more paragraphs. You get the flexibility to choose what makes sense to you, and I'll read them every month, and I might ask you for more detail if it's too short, or I might ask you to scale it back a little if it's too long. But there's no real guidelines. It's something, anything, that describes the impact of what you're doing, an impact on you, an impact on your community, an impact on volunteers, or an impact on the kids and youth that we serve through the mentoring relationships. And that's what we're looking for in Great Stories. Any questions about what's required or expected around Great Stories? Okay. The last thing that you'll see here is this red box that says, please click here if any of the youth that are served are in any kind of danger. All of you within your internal programs should already have some sort of a safety check or process for dealing with youth safety issues. This is a kind of an extra layer of protection to ensure that if there is any type of danger, that youth or students might be facing, there's another way for us to flag it. So if, for whatever reason, you find that one of the youth that you're serving is in some type of danger, go ahead and click this. The only thing that will happen as a result of that is it will trigger me to connect with the local supervisory team to trigger a larger conversation. And it's just an extra layer, because the first rule of our youth serving programs is to do no harm. So this is kind of a safety, one extra layer of safety. Okay, so we've talked for about 45 minutes, and I've done most of the talking. So I hope that you're all still awake on a sunny Friday morning. Let me pause one more time and ask if there are any questions about this before I move on just to a couple logistical pieces and we'll conclude. Okay, I'm going to pause for about 30 seconds to let any questions come in. Okay, I don't see or hear any of them, so hopefully that means this made some sense. Okay, then a couple of logistics to take note of. The first is around due dates. So the reporting guidelines and deadlines are as follows. Every month on the 7th of the month, you will have a report due. So circle it on your calendar, highlight it, put it in your smartphone calendar, do whatever it is you do to remind yourself about due dates. That on the 7th, a report is due by the close of business, by 5 o'clock on the 7th. If the 7th ever falls on a Saturday or Sunday, we bump it to the next Monday. But the 7th is that key due date. So the 7th, so for example, let's take November 7th. November 7th, under normal circumstances, would have been the due date for October's reporting. So the 7th for the previous month is how you should think about it. On November 7, October's report would be due. On December 7, November's report would be due, and so on and so forth. So we give you a full week after the month is done to get this stuff in, okay? For these first two reporting logs, September and October, they're going to have the same due date, and that due date is November 12. So that gives you all of next week to complete your September reports and your October reports. If you're a second-year member and you did not begin until October, which is all of you who are with us, and Carlos, this is actually going to apply to you in December, you will not start using America Learns for your reporting until the month that your new service term began. So Sarah Williams, Priscilla, and Bethany, I think that's you three, your September reports should still come in through Encore, and I believe those are already all in. Your October reports should come in through America Learns. And Carlos, since you're with me, I'll use this to address you as well. Your reports will not begin in America Learns until the January 7th date. So your December reports will come in through America Learns. Your October reports and your November reports need to come in through Encore. Okay? Okay, sorry, I'm pausing to address a couple questions. Kadisha, your question, how many service projects? One minimum per service year, but there is no maximum. So then in the context of reporting deadlines, again, November 12, circle that date, that's a Saturday, gives you all of next week to complete September and October. Then beginning on December 7, we'll start rolling with a normal schedule. December 7, your November reports will be due. You will receive some automated emails through the system to help prod you and encourage you, but ultimately it is your responsibility to get those reports in and to get them done. Then the last piece of logistics, and this is to hopefully eliminate any confusion. You will use two online systems this year. The first one is Encore. And Encore is about reporting time. So you will do your timesheets in Encore. But other than that, you will not utilize Encore. So don't enter any reports or anything into Encore. For all of your reporting around progress for new matches and everything we talked about today, you will use America Learns, and you won't enter anything related to timesheets in America Learns. Okay? So it'll be simple once you get the hang of it, but just be intentional the first couple times through. Encore is timesheets. America Learns is for reporting. All right? Okay, so that's all I've got for you all today. Thank you. If there's no other questions, I'm going to give us about 10 seconds to make sure. I'm going to go ahead and conclude the call. And then just reiterate that at the end of today or early Monday, once all of your accounts are created, you're going to get an email. Each of you will get a personal email with the link to the website, your username and password, and some instructions that kind of recap the stuff that we talked about today. And then the last thing I'll say is, when you start these reporting and reflection logs, call me with any questions directly. There's no question that's silly. There's no bad questions. I'm happy to help you. Any of those things. Alicia has one last question. Alicia's been having a heck of a time with Encore and timesheets, and Alicia, I don't have an update for you, unfortunately. I would just ask that if you are having problems getting into Encore for timesheets, essentially what's happening is the Encore team implemented a variety of upgrades to the back end of their system in September and October, and there have been a bunch of bugs that have been the result of those upgrades. And so for some of you, you might not have been able to log in and complete timesheets. If and when that happens, please email me to let me know that that's the case, because what we're trying to do is isolate the members where there are bugs, and then I actually forward those emails on to the Encore support team to troubleshoot individual accounts, because there doesn't seem to be any pattern, and that's what they're trying to identify. So if you're having problems with Encore, please shoot me and Marilyn an email. Let me know what the problem is so we can help to get it addressed. Okay, any other questions? Okay, thanks for your time, everyone, on this Friday. I look forward to getting these reports in and hearing more about what you've accomplished in the first couple months, and I appreciate your time today. Happy Friday. Enjoy it. I hope it's as beautiful where you are as it is in Lansing, and have a wonderful weekend. And we will see you in just a short couple weeks at the Mentoring Conference. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.